lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me, I don't just have one guest, I have two. I have Michael Conrad and Becky Cloonan, who have done a shit ton of work in the comic book industry. They are co-writing something that I really, really loved this past month. I think last month, actually, Immortal Wonder Woman. So I wanted to get a chance to talk with you guys, talk about, how you got into comics and what you got coming up. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for for supporting what we've been doing. It's been really exciting seeing how people respond to stuff, and it's been kind of surprising in a lot of ways. The different types of readers that have gravitated toward the type of story that we're telling with Immortal Wonder Woman. We didn't really have a target audience in mind. We just knew that we really loved Diana and wanted to tell this important story about her at the end of time. So it's been really neat to see the types of people that it's connected with, and also some of the people that it hasn't quite connected with. It's just been interesting. I welcome people to have whatever opinions they will. Of course, yeah. I prefer when people like it.
Of course,
but that's the goal, really.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see who it really resonates with. So it was exciting to know that you guys appreciated it. So
yeah, I mean, it's awesome, man. You guys did a hell of a job. I was skeptical. I'll be honest. I was skeptical about Future State in the beginning before creative teams were announced, any of that stuff, just the initiative. I was like, because I'm a huge DC fan. That's what started my love of comic books was DC. And I'm like, well, is it going to matter? Is this stuff going to pay off? Is it just going to be like a stopgap in between new runs with new creators? Then I started seeing the teams, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Like some names I recognize, some I didn't. And I like that. I like to get fresh voices in DC and Marvel, because I feel like sometimes they can get stale when they just go through the same writers, right? Or same artists. And then the announcements for March, post-Future State, you guys are writing Wonder Woman, which we'll get into as well, which I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Like, this is what I want to see. I want to see these writers, especially the writers, more than anything, like being able to like now go back in time to, back in time to the present, and maybe these things will pay off, and maybe we'll get hints of these futures moving forward. So I'm very excited you guys are taking a Wonder Woman. I was hand selling Immortal Wonder Woman. All the books that really stood out to me, I've been hand selling. We decided after week one, we're going to read every book. Well, I read every book. We've been talking about it every week, and I think I've tagged you guys in it. The writing, phenomenal. And then you got Jen Bartel, who I'm a huge fan of.
Oh my God. That was before we wrote it, when we were pitching around like ideas and like, who would draw it, Jen Bartel's name came up like right away. And I'm such a big fan, and I love her, just everything about her I love. So when they were like, yeah, let's do it, I was like, oh my God. And then her schedule was free, and I was like, I can't believe this is happening. So we were really lucky to get in a position where we wrote the book for her. Usually, like when you're on a book, sometimes you don't know who's going to be drawing it at first. So as a writer, it's kind of difficult because you're kind of writing it blind without knowing like how it's going to look, really, because every artist is going to interpret it differently. So if you know who's going to be drawing it, you can kind of envision that in mind and like really play to that artist's strengths. So we were really lucky to do that with this story. It's just like everything about it. I love the way it looks. So
we wanted we wanted to create opportunities for Jen to really shine. Obviously, we wanted to tell a cohesive story that was powerful and moving, and did the things that we love comic books to do. But we wanted to present the story through the lens of Jen, and I think it's really paid off, because Jen can draw anything.
Oh, yeah.
But there's certain strengths that she has with expression and with color and with these, celestial bodies and, beautiful sequences mixed with like this impending darkness.
In issue 2, we asked her like basically just recreate this Gustave Doré picture, and she did. Like,
yeah,
you could just ask her to do anything and she'll do it. She'll do it so well.
And we, like Becky touched on this, we just love her as a person as well.
She's really a nice person. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She's so incredibly kind. Before
she sent us a statue.
Yeah, she sent us a Wonder Woman statue. It was like,
That's awesome.
what? A statue? But before I had really many credits, I continue to be pretty new to, the big leagues of comics. She treated me as a peer immediately. And that's something that's kind of rare in an industry where people are so protective of their little pocket that they're hanging on to. It's really it really speaks to the nature of her character that she gave me a seat at the table and treated me like something other than Becky's weird giant sized partner. So I was really excited when she came on board because it's a family affair. It's a bunch of friends getting together and telling the best damn story that we can.
I'm going to jump around from how I planned to talk to you guys because I kind of like where we're going with this. First off, Becky, I've known your work for a long time. You know what I mean? I've been a fan of yours for quite a while, both your art and your writing. Michael, I discovered you from the Hey Amateur book by Shelley.
Oh wow! That's great. I was so I'm going to use a British term because Shelley's an Anglophile, but I was chuffed when she asked me to be part of that because I don't think she really knew me very well either. I'm an unknown commodity. So for her to ask me to be in this book that's just loaded down with incredible legendary talent as well as some newer voices, I was super excited. And that's what a cool way to have you come across my name. I'm super proud of that book, and I'm glad that that's where you found me.
Shelley Bond's my favorite editor in comic books. So, I mean, I started paying attention to editing, I would say probably when I was a teenager. I started like really wanting to know every aspect of what went into comics, and being a huge Vertigo fan, her name was like on all of my favorite stories. So I ended up developing kind of a friendship with her through Hey Amateur because I reached out. I'm like, I want to interview you, and I think I'm going to be interviewing her for the third time tomorrow, but for her new book that she's got on Kickstarter right now. But yeah, like that book brought so many creators to my attention. It's almost like my go-to book if I'm thinking of like I want to talk to somebody new that maybe not everybody knows, and just so many creatives. And then the insider art thing that she did too was another awesome project. I mean,
Shelley's like the arbiter of cool,
Yeah,
like she knows
everybody.
It's like she's such a good curator. She has like a very like her eye for what looks good and who to talk to. It's like that's the perfect thing. These are like Bibles. What she puts together.
Really? I know they really are. I mean, I think I told her, I said, thank you for giving me like not a how-to, but a who's who of who to talk to in comic books, because that's really what it was. And it's such an amazing project. Insider art, what she did with that was amazing. But yeah, anyways, I mean, I could talk about her, but we're here to talk about you guys. I did want to, you touched on writing for Jen Bartel, like writing to her strengths. Now, you guys are both artists as well. How does that, being an artist yourself, how does that affect the way you approach a script when you've scripted other people's, scripting other people's stuff? And do you ever do thumbnails of stuff the way you want it, or do you kind of just let the artists go and do what they do?
When I first started writing, I had come from years, I had written my own stories and drawn for myself, but mostly I worked with writers. So when I first started dipping my toe into writing more, I had worked with some amazing writers, so I had really good scripts to like kind of base my format off of. And I knew because just intuitively what I could fit on a page just from drawing so much, but I had a really hard time like thinking in words. So my first several books that I wrote, or several issues, I ended up like thumbnailing everything. And then I would like kind of dictate in the script what was happening on the page, and it worked out pretty well, but I don't need to do that anymore. So now I'm better at thinking as like a wordsmith.
Yeah, I find that in working with artists, sometimes if I need, like Becky was saying, that kind of visual pivot point to be able to properly describe something, sometimes I'll jot a quick thumbnail. But I find that when working with artists, sometimes the over direction will create this like constrictive environment where it's not allowing the person to give their best showing. They're trying too hard to meet this, heavily directed panel by panel. We write pretty much panel by panel. Both of us have very similar scripting styles, which is why we can work together pretty well. But artist dependent, it's clear right away, I think, who wants a lot of direction and who wants some room to be able to make some big choices. In terms of stuff for ourselves, I think pretty much anyone that draws and writes for themselves, they do it in kind of a shorthand, because you have that presence of mind to know, like, oh, I understand what I mean when I say this one sentence right here. When writing for someone else, I have discovered that sometimes if I leave it a little too ambiguous, then it'll miss this emotional beat that I'm looking for. So it's this never-ending game of trying to balance giving enough that your vision is making its way to the page without giving so much that the artist feels like, man, I'm just this guy's arm now. I'm not even contributing to the storytelling. It's meant to be a shared experience. It's meant to be something where we're collaborating. So I try and give enough room within the script for the artist to feel like they've got some real agency in terms of how the page looks and how it moves. So for that reason, I really try not to over envision the page beyond making sure that the story is being told and that those emotional beats are getting hit.
Yeah, there's like a few times when we'll write a page, and sometimes if I think of a shorthand for it, like a really easy layout that I would do immediately, I'll write that in, like 3 panels across the top, a wide panel in the middle, blah, blah, blah. It's like I'll describe it, but that rarely happens. And it's only if I think it would make the artist's life a little easier. Like, hey, here's what I would do, but don't feel like you have to stick to it.
There were a couple moments where it's kind of just critical to the pacing that we become a little more directorial. You'll see in our forthcoming the Wonder Woman ongoing, there's a sequence that kind of keeps repeating, and for that we wanted to be very clear about how that transpired, because we wanted a cohesion of that sequence that keeps showing up again and again, to have this familiarity, so that when the reader sees that, it's a bit of a cue of, oh, okay, here's what's happening. But even with that, everything's a conversation. You can't, as a writer, you can't get too married to something, because I'm not going to send a high level artist back because I've got some weird little whimsy. I'm not afraid to let people know when something didn't quite land for me. But it's really, as a writer, you're kind of like the director, and the artist is like the cinematographer, and you got to let the artist do what they do best sometimes. I'm not a great artist. Becky's a great artist, so I can only imagine that it's like a little different. Her perspective is a little bit different. She might have a little bit more of a critical eye.
Well, I look and I think when I write a page, I'll think like, on this page, what would I struggle with? And sometimes I'll take those things out. Like if I see like, oh, there's like an angle that I would struggle with, or like something that I would like, oh, here's how to make something like easier for the artist.
Which is where our collaboration comes in really nicely, because I'll write something, and then Becky will take a look at it and be like, "You're really gonna do that to me? Like, take it easy on him. Like, get rid of
this thing. Yeah. We don't need to see that."
Like, I had a sequence where there's like a bunch of chains everywhere.
I was like, no one wants to draw chains. Like, turn it into a rope.
Then I showed up with a Spawn comic, and I was like, Toddy Mac will do it. Get the Todd father in here.
When he draws Wonder Woman, we can add some more chains.
Yeah, Bobby, we're gonna. I'm not gonna do a Todd impersonation.
So going into your writing, like co-writing, to me, like I've always been curious, because I've actually never been able to talk to somebody or both writers that are co-writing a book together. So I wanted to know, like, you guys have done like the Doom Patrol book together. You did the Bizarre Adventures together. What is that writing relationship in terms of how do the responsibilities get broken down, and how like collaborative is it in terms of the plot? I would imagine would be easier to more collaborate, but in terms of like scripting, who does scripting and stuff like that?
Everything is kind of fluid. It really depends on the story that we're telling. But we've seemed to have kind of fallen into a pattern of what has been working best for us, which is, so we'll take an assignment. You're going to write this issue of Doom Patrol, and we'll talk for days and days about the type of Doom Patrol story that we want to tell. And during that time, there will be like a seed of an idea, and it gets so buried in all this like soil of other ideas that you forget who had the original seed. I think we both are like, that was my idea. But all these different ideas pile on top of it, and we keep watering it and doing our thing. And then eventually we've got like a real, like, okay, this is the one. We'll sit down, we'll write down this core idea, and then break it down into like page beats.
So every page gets like a paragraph.
Yeah, a paragraph or a sentence.
Yeah, like,
Robot Man punches this person, and
you try to like hit all your beats, and then the editors will look at that and approve it.
Yeah, so once we get approval on those beats, I'll usually be Becky's far more busy than I am because she's got like professional illustration assignments, other writing things, working on her own stuff. Me, I'm waiting, I'm waiting in the wings. I'm champing at the bit. So we get the approval on the beats, and I jump in and I write the first draft. And the first draft is kind of what you would expect of a first draft, which is something that's like, I'll try and write everything, but save like a page or two. Like just not have like, oh, it's meant to be 22 pages. I'm going to write 20 pages and leave these other two as kind of floating because something's going to need to get built out. It'll be kind of clunky, have a bunch of hair on it that needs to get shaved off, or, whatever. It's ugly. It gets sent over to Becky. Becky cleans it up.
We work in Google Docs, so we can kind of like log in and see each other kind of changing things as we go.
Which I try not to do, because if you ever want your soul to hurt, you watch somebody in real time, like editing this thing that you think picked ass.
And it does. It's like what Michael will send over, and he's like a much faster writer than I am. I'm slow, and like I hem and haw over like every sentence that I write. So it takes me like weeks to write a script, and Michael will come back in a couple of days and be like, here's this beautiful thing. And it hits all the beats, and it's just a matter of going through and like cleaning stuff up and being like really looking at it with a critical eye and being like, well, does this sequence work, or can we move this thing over here? Like what, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk about it, like changes. If I have like a big change that I want to make, or if I have an idea when I'm going through that, I'll come out and like talk to him, which, we argue about it sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's like not, I've worked on like with collaborative writing teams before. Mm-hmm. So it's always like the biggest lesson I had to learn when working on Gotham Academy was like really try not to get butthurt about like what would get taken out of my scripts.
Yeah.
Because we would all sit down, me, Brendan, and Carl, and like talk over, like do dialogue edits and like edit each other's scripts and stuff like that. So
I haven't learned that lesson. I still walk around bleeding all the time. I'm just like, oh my, I wrote this incredible sequence where it's just somebody sitting in a room alone being sad for 3 pages. And you think it can be done in 2 panel, we all think that our stuff is brilliant, but I think in the process of collaborating with Becky so much, we've realized that we do have different voices. We're super unified in certain respects, but also we've got very different voices, and it just so happens that I really believe that those voices go well together. It's just a matter of finding that balance. So when Becky's done with her pass on that draft, it gets sent back to me. I'll look over it. Usually I'm not there to reorganize or rebuild or anything like that. Once it gets back to me, it's got that Becky touch to it that's pretty damn good. I'll go through and I'll just make sure that the stuff that I wanted in there, that I advocate for it if it's no longer in there, or, you know, I'll tweak a little bit of dialogue or something like that. Then we'll get together again. We'll look at it again one last time, and then it's off to the editors. And then the editors come back and say,
They've got a ton of notes.
Yeah, here's the notes. And it changes again. And again, we go through that process of discussing how it's going to work. I'll step up to bat first. She'll come in on cleanup. We'll get back together again.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be like, oh, change this ending doesn't quite work, or like, you know, maybe do something here, and we have to sit down and like figure out, well, how do we change it?
Troubleshooting, and then you change one thing, and then the beats for the rest of the issues are blown.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because
So then
if you got to move something up, so
sometimes changing, like pulling one block out will like topple the whole, you know,
Right.
castle of cards.
yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of words to say. We just kick it back and forth repeatedly, and we try and have as much fun as we can. Becky's right. There's moments where you'll feel precious about something, and it'll hurt to let it go. But thankfully, this is Becky, who I care about deeply and respect. It's not.
Well, thank you.
It's not some other clown from the comics industry who I would be like, you're wrong and I'm right. Like, I'm better. Like, you want to have a push-up contest over? You know, it would. I think I'm a decent collaborator, but I think Becky's like a really excellent collaborator. For me being okay at it, she compensates by being really kind and really giving and allowing me to do some of the weird things that maybe another collaborator would be like, no, you can't do that. Like, we're trying to make sure this thing actually sells. So I know most people aren't super familiar with my personal work, but I've got a graphic novel through Comixology Originals called Tremor Dose. So if people want to see like kind of what I'm doing independent of Becky, that's a good place to start. And you'll see, like, my writing is not for everyone. Like, when I'm left to my own devices, it is not for everyone. Boy, it does pretty darn good. But I've got a different voice. Who knows? Maybe in the future you'll see more writing from just me through some of these big publishers. But for now, the big interest is making sure that the stuff that we're doing with Wonder Woman and with Midnighter really connects with a broad audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I think that the first issue is phenomenal. I can't wait to read the second one this week. How did the Future State project, and which is also going to lead into the ongoing, was that always part of the plan? And if you could just elaborate too on how this all happened.
I have no idea how it happened. It started with an email from Jamie Rich about Midnighter, and he's like, "You guys want to do a Midnighter story?"
I thought Jamie Rich didn't like me. I met him one time at a con, and I don't know. I just got this vibe that he thought that I was like just some douchey dude who didn't belong there. Turns out, Jamie is just that kind of dude. You know, he's got like kind of like a dry sense of humor, and super cool guy, super big heart, kind, all the good superlatives I can fling at him. But he's got this dry sense of humor that I didn't quite get at first. So after meeting him, I was like, well, I don't think Jamie's ever gonna have me do anything ever. And I was like sad and walking around like Linus or something. So when this email came in, it was like, hey, he specifically said, would you guys like to collaborate on this Midnighter thing? I was over the moon. I was like, oh my goodness, like, he doesn't think that I'm a clown.
And you love Midnighter.
And I love Midnighter. So you put the two things together, and baby, we're cooking with grease. So immediately a story showed up, in our conversations, and we had a meeting with the Superman group to talk about like kind of what everyone was doing in terms of the timeline.
Oh yeah, there's Future State meetings, and it's like every group gets together, and they're crazy because it's so many people involved, so many amazing ideas, and everyone's just like going off, and it's like it's like chaos, but it's invigorating.
Yeah.
It's chaotic, like juice.
It's a big Zoom
Yeah.
chat with everyone just talking over each other.
I mean, that sounds
Which is
awesome.
great.
I'd love to be a fly on that wall, honestly. So
It's, man, there's so many great ideas that, like, there's stuff that's just like left on the table that I'm like, man, what if that thing had happened? Either way, I think we did a fine job with what we were sharing. All the other
Mhm.
writers were excited about it. The editors were excited about it. So shortly thereafter, we get another email that says, hey, we've got this Wonder Woman idea that we want to do, and it's her like way in the future. Do you have any ideas for that?
And it's like, well, duh.
And of course, we're like,
Of course
put
we
it,
do.
put it way.
Make
way.
it the most,
Yeah,
like at
the
the,
most
end of the
way.
future, like the end of time. Like, can we do that? And they're like, yeah, totally. Like, that
Yeah.
sounds cool. So
And
you
I think
go.
there was a lot of excitement in the office when we started turning in our scripts and sharing these ideas. So, and around that time, there was going to be a turnover on the regular book, and I think they just internally, among the editorial group there, were like, well, these guys are here and they really seem to understand and love Diana. Let's
Party.
let's party. So I didn't even realize that we were legitimately writing Wonder Woman ongoing. I
Mhm.
thought like, oh, after this we'll get to do a little bit more. So I was excited about that, and then
they start talking about double shipping, and he's like, "Oh my god,
well,
it's happening!"
I was excited, but it just seemed like, okay, we're just kind of bridging the gap until they find another writer. And then we did this like online convention in Brazil, and it right before we went live on it, like we're doing this panel with the team that has worked on the Nubia element of Immortal Wonder Woman,
Jen
and
was
with
on
Jen and the editors. They said, hey, this is going to be, we're like at the end of this, we're going to announce that Becky and Michael are the new writers of Wonder Woman, like the ongoing. Okay, and 5, 3, 2, 1, and then we're live on this thing. And I was like, I must have been like smiling ear to ear, like when the thing went live, because I was like, holy shit, like we're writing Wonder Woman now? Like, that's great. It wasn't until after that I was like, man, what are we gonna do with Wonder Woman? Like I wasn't expecting to be able to hang on to her for that long. I hope to hang on to her for a good long time. I know like one of the big critiques about the Wonder Woman book is that there's like a turnover in writers.
Yeah.
We've got big plans. The story that we're kind of kicking off with is kind of resolving some of the stuff from death metal and kind of like making sure that everything's tied up with that and that we honor that continuity. But I mean, it's this year that Diana turns 80. This is her
Crazy.
her anniversary year, so there's a huge burden there for us to say we need to have a real statement piece ready to go by October when it's her anniversary. We can tell a badass romp in the meantime,
Okay.
but the big push is once October rolls around, we want to have established our voice through Diana and be able to really blow it up when that 80th anniversary comes along.
Yeah, everything we're doing right now is building to that. So we have this like crazy story that I can't believe they're letting us tell, because it's kind of out there. Like it's just all these pieces are just building and building and building, and then it all comes together in the fall. So it's really exciting.
I mean, that's what I like. That's what I want to see. Like, I like seeing these, like you're saying, you can't believe they let you do it. That's should be letting you guys as creatives do stuff. Like I was just talking about a book with, my buddy Dylan, from a few years ago, Power Man and Iron Fist by David Walker and Sanford Green. It's like that.
Oh yeah.
Gone longer. You know what I mean? And it's like, we don't have enough stories that are really different and that stand out like that sometimes. And I think that's what I like about the future state stuff is, like you got the Gotham stuff, like neo-noir. Like I didn't know I needed that in my life, but I love it. I'm loving the stuff that's coming out from that. I mean, as a whole, I would say Future State is a success in my eyes. I like a lot of this stuff. I do want to ask though, is your future state book, some of the future stuff that's happening, are you going to kind of have hints of that in this run that are like gearing up towards some of those events? That's the first part. And second part, I wanted to ask, was the Batman utility belt on Diana, was that a nod to Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman Dead Earth by any chance?
So the first part of that, our Wonder Woman in Future State takes place so far in the future. We don't even touch on it in our our coming up story because it would be impossible to seed it really. Although there are characters in it that who knows, they might show up.
Okay.
She's being cagey with you.
I am being a little cagey, but it is so far in the future.
With all of this stuff, it's canon, you know, and I think people don't want to say that. Like they want to say, oh, these are potential futures or this or that. I believe if you write something cool enough in comics, it becomes canon. It's canon for somebody, and we've seen it time and again, you know, like Dark Knight isn't necessarily like the future of Batman, but it is, you know, like you ask any Batman fan, oh, who's Robin in the future? And it's Carrie Kelly. And that's like an alternate time. All of these things are determined by the hive mind of comic readership. If you read it and you love it, it will become real. It will manifest into standard continuity. Furthermore, as a result of death metal, and it kind of undid all the Gordian knot of continuity within the DCU, and it says like, hey, all these in Multiversity by Grant Morrison kind of laid the stage for that. All these things kind of coexist. It's a matter of when a creative team gets on a book, how much can they lean into a thing that maybe the company agenda is leaning away from. So no, Future State isn't canon. It's like potential futures, but as the guy that wrote the thing, that is the end story.
Yeah,
that's it. That's how the story ends. Will we insert maybe nods to that? Have we already done that? I don't totally want to say.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But this is regular continuity. It's got nothing to do with, you know.
Yeah.
We got like a weird review on some other podcast, some lesser podcast where somebody was reading Immortal Wonder Woman and they're like, well, I like it, but why should I care about this? Like that's a weird take. Like me, I'm just like,
why care about anything?
Their intimation with that statement was, does it play into the greater continuity? And to my mind, great continuity that interconnects all these different titles, it makes for a really fulfilling story, and it's great, and it's a lot of fun to like track down all these things. But it's also, you got to understand, that's like a means of making sure that you pick up a ton of books every month. You know, like, oh, continued in Green Lantern. Okay, I guess now I'm reading Green Lantern. Hopefully you get into Green Lantern or in Batman or this or that. Why does it matter? I don't know. Why does anything matter? You know?
Yep.
Because along with that stuff about, oh, is this canon? Is this canonical to the mission? That, like I said, it depends on whether people respond to it or not. And equally, if people don't respond to stuff, it gets undone real quick.
Yeah.
It gets undone real quick.
Oh, you remember those Spider-Man Clone Wars?
Yeah, there's all these
like,
codes.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never read it. It might kick ass. I
but
might
then
be
you
a
have a story.
boy.
Then you have a story like Days of Future Past that is like only in my mind. It's hundreds of pages long, and you go back and it's only 2 issues.
I know, it's crazy to think about.
When I read it as a kid and then like reading it, you know, years later when I was older, I was surprised at how short it was, because in my mind I had made it so much bigger, and it set the stage for so much. And I mean, that's kind of like the goal really, is to do something like get in, do something that everyone will always remember, and then leave, you know, quietly.
I mean, that's a sick outlook. Yeah. I don't know that I share that one. Becky has often said like, oh, the only reason to ever write a book is to like tell the definitive story.
Well, kind of.
And I love that. And that's like the big goal, you know, that's the big swing.
You want to be able to, like, when you're invited to do a story, you want to be able to make sure that it's something you can really leave your mark on.
Yeah.
That,
sure.
you know, when you do something, it's not just like something that people will pick up and enjoy and then forget. It's like, you want this to be something that like moves people and like people get emotionally invested in them. And like, you want to make a story that people will think about after they close the book. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you envision a character, you envision that version. If you're drawing it, you know, if I'm drawing it, I want to make something that people are going to conjure up in their mind. I don't know.
As for the Daniel Warren Johnson connection with the utility belt, had no clue.
Damn.
No clue.
Damn. I thought I was right. All right. Well,
love Daniel Warren Johnson.
So much.
Super
So
interested to read Dead Earth. Haven't done it yet because I've been like reading so much old stuff. So because there's such a history with Wonder Woman, I want to be able to show up when somebody says, oh, what about the Holiday Girls? To be able to be like, well, you know, in issue 12 that came out, you know, 80 years ago, I want to be able to show up and respond to that stuff. I've read a ton of contemporary Wonder Woman as well. Dead Earth was one that when we started writing Immortal Wonder Woman, it wasn't, I don't think it was done yet or something like that. So, and I was waiting, I was like, oh, I'll get the trade when it's done. So it was actually through y'all that I heard you guys talking about it. And I was like, oh, damn, she wore the utility belt. Yeah, I'm on my phone, like Googling. And I went to Becky and I was like, she's worn it before. But I loved that you guys were like, oh, that's like kind of referential to this and yada yada. And I was like, man, let them believe it. You know, like
I'm gonna keep believing it if that's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of this.
That was a nice synchronicity.
The interconnected relationship that we have as readers and fans and creators, there isn't a huge gap between any of us. We're all kind of in it together. We're all rooting for these things to be cool and fun and worth doing and having. So when I hear someone like you say, oh, I think that was like a bit of a nod to this other thing that is showing another like potential future for Wonder Woman, I love that. And I also love the fact that Immortal Wonder Woman doesn't exclude the potential of Dead Earth. You know,
it doesn't.
It's truly up to the reader. The reader can say, oh, like the end of times for Diana looked like this or that, or they can do like I do and say, you know, I'm not super concerned about canon with regard to these stories because they're both really good and they're doing their own thing, and the art in both of them is completely standalone, kick ass. You know? So I love it. Yeah. Believe that we thought about, had like this dynamic idea. I want you to believe that we're smarter than we are right now and that we wanted to give a little nod to our contemporaries with that one. But no, I was so momentarily distraught when you guys brought that up. I was like, oh, damn, I thought we were being real clever. And no.
No. I mean, either way, it was really cool. And to the people out there that said, why should they care? You brought up Dark Knight Returns. I mean, I'll bring up Kingdom Come. New Frontier by Darwin Cook. Those in continuity. Why do you care about those? You know what I mean? Like to me, that's just a bullshit review. It's an even
the Elseworld stuff has been some of my favorite books. And it's like that stuff, well, I mean, until recently, I guess, but you know, at the time it was just like, oh, here's some cool stories.
Yeah.
And that's just what you want, is like stories that speak to you.
We've made no bones about this being a fact, in that one of our most inspirational characterizations of Wonder Woman is from The New Frontier by Darwin Cook.
Oh yeah, Darwin's Wonder Woman is like just
I know.
And she's not even in the book a ton, but he manages to show up with like in such like a way that only Darwin can. You know, a crazy uppercut, like this is who she is, bang, in like a single panel. You can look up the panel. It's her in like Vietnam or something like that, like drinking with these warrior women that she's kind of united. And it's such a powerful sequence that will continue to inform our view of Diana as much as, you know, a giant stack of her older comics. It's that is the power of this medium, and that's the type of juice that we're trying to channel into what we're doing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, but what does it matter? It's not canonical, right?
Yeah. I mean, fuck them. You know what I mean? I do want to ask before, because I do want to talk briefly about Midnighter, but I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate without giving any key elements away, what we can expect with the Wonder Woman ongoing when that drops in March.
Well, we had solicitations just came out for I don't remember the number, 773.
It's hard to say. We start with
Anyway.
770.
770, and it's Diana in the Sphere of the Gods, and it's kind of bonkers. We're pulling in a lot of crazy characters. We're inventing a lot of new characters, so we're going to introduce people to some, I don't know.
We've paid a lot of attention to characters from the DCU who maybe got brought up once or twice, and being like, oh, let's learn more about them in this moment where we have an opportunity to explore. This is going to be disappointing to some Wonder Woman fans who like want us immediately to jump in, get our relationships going with the Wonder Fam and all that. But we've got some serious stuff to resolve from Death Metal. You know, she has ascended. You know, she's done. She's watching over the multiverse. You know, she's doing God's work literally.
She ends up in Valhalla.
Yeah. So that's
Strangely
where
enough.
we jump through.
She's a little lost. She's like, why? How did I get here? What's going on?
In the wrong afterlife.
In the wrong afterlife. If anyone wants, I guess, spoilers, I mean, it's out, right?
It's in the solicits. I don't want to
skip ahead if you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we get to bring back Thor.
What?
Yeah, so
that's dope.
Yeah, Kirby's Thor was actually before Marvel's Thor. So DC's.
Well, Marvel's Thor was Kirby.
Yeah, but like Kirby did Thor for DC before he did Thor for Marvel. So it's like kind of a funny, and our Thor is like just he's really fun to write.
It's a Thor that we did
so
a lot of
awesome.
research into Norse mythology. We're both fans of Norse mythology. This was an opportunity to really get into the mythology and kind of bring it over into the superhero world. But we kind of like, I think the characterization of some of these things in superhero comics, it's like you want them all to be superheroes. And we didn't really want that. We just wanted them to be like the Norse dudes and dudettes. You know, we wanted them to be like as one might be, without the idea of spandex and without the idea of like flying around doing heroic things. Different mindset, different value system, and bouncing that off Diana and seeing how she responds to it. We've managed to do a thing with Diana that allows her to have a couple different responses. But I mean, we've already said too much, so we'll edit out the bits about Thor.
Yeah, but he's in the new solicits, so I don't feel
okay.
too bad.
Yeah.
All right. So you don't mind if I leave that in there? I feel bad to erase the name Kirby out of anything. So is that cool? All right, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
It's not spoiling a ton. Everyone knows that she's going to Asgard.
Mm-hmm.
Thor lives there. Like,
yeah. A lot of other people live there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of other folks that live there. So it's gonna be
yeah, but shit's fucked up in Asgard. You know, of course Wonder Woman gets drawn into this, you know, whole thing, but it's really just about her kind of reconciling everything that happened in Death Metal, and then where does that leave her? You know, as someone who's left the mortal plane, what do you do? And she's immortal, as we know from Immortal Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Oh man, very, very excited now for this book. I cannot wait.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm just loving your ideas. Loving it.
Travis Moore is absolutely killing it on art.
Yeah, and Tamara Bonvillain, who colored the Doom Patrol issue that we did, we like requested her specifically for this.
She is
like
an amazing
one of my
colorist.
favorite colorists.
Like her work on once in future is
Oh,
so good. It is so
so good.
She elevates everything she touches, and she's, again, this is like that family thing that we talk about. She's just a friend, you know. It's like, oh, super cool that we get to team up with a friend outside of, you know, this professional sphere that we're working in, and be able to collaborate. It's it makes it like a something that we're super happy to be there for. So
I do want to ask about Midnighter. You guys doing the backups in the Superman Worlds of War, and then you're going to be continuing backups in one of the Superman books. I can't remember what.
Action Comics.
Yeah.
Okay, in Action Comics.
The great granddaddy of all comics. Or not all comics, but of all superhero comics. I was super excited that it was going to show up in Action, because I feel like that's kind of like the one, you know, that's
yeah, of course.
good. Yeah, Midnighter's super fun, and I think that people who maybe have slept on it, like if they're aware of Immortal Wonder Woman, they think, oh, Michael and Becky write these kind of somber, lyrical, sad
Yeah,
meanderings.
little poetic.
I think they're in for maybe a shock if they check out Midnighter, because we very much have written Midnighter as like a Verhoeven type of movie, like the guy who did RoboCop and Starship Troopers and stuff like that. We wanted it to be a violent, over-the-top freak out with mind-bending elements. And I think once people finish up the future state piece of it, they might not know exactly what to expect, but I'm hoping that we've created a compelling enough dialogue with the audience that they'll be willing to continue to stick with it and to check it out in the back of Action.
We somehow convinced Jamie Rich to let us like drag our story from future state into like major continuity.
Yeah, so anybody who wants
Nice.
to question if future state is canon or not, like we have a character that exists and has connectivity between.
It was
these
so hard to
continuities.
do. I wrote like charts trying to explain it to Michael. I was like, you know,
She
scribbled on
didn't
the
try
wall.
and explain it to me. She's making it sound like this is her grand scheme. Listen, we collaborated on this idea. We didn't know exactly how to make this idea work. Like when the nitpicky weirdos show up and they're like, but what about but what if? So
Because that's what editors do. They'll come in and like try to, you know, they won't try to poke holes in it, but they will question things.
they're advocating for the audience who will do that.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
they want to make
Okay.
sure everything works, and they'll come in with questions. And if you don't have answers for it, you better think of them quick.
So Becky presented it to me in a visual way.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this was a shared idea. Like this came out of my brain too, man. But then when I'm looking at all these graphs, math, arrows going this way and that, she's got yarn on the wall connecting different pictures of. I became violently ill. I had to go sit down. I couldn't be around it. This isn't.
We thought ourselves into like a Gordian knot.
Yeah,
It was
this isn't the best way to like tell people like, hey, come check out our fun like violent.
Oh yeah,
comic
you want to think yourself into a Gordian knot?
We welcome you to try and punch holes in this thing. It is it's Teflon. You can't poke a hole in it, and it's a twisty tale. We're super excited about it. We got to have Gleb Melnikov, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, handle the first part, and then we knew that Gleb was going to be unavailable moving forward. We were scared, you know. We were like, oh no, who's gonna help us bake this bread? Then all of a sudden Michael Looming shows up in our laps, and we're like, wow, like it's such a different look, and it's such a different approach to even the way that the pages will be arranged and designed. He's one of those people, you twist up that rubber band and you let him go, and he's just a fount of wild ideas.
Yeah.
So having Oming come on and be the one to carry this thing from part 2 all the way to the end of it is so exciting. Seeing his stuff come through, like we're well in advance of where we need to be right now. And it feels like every day I get this like little magic treat in my inbox, which is new oming art, where each time it's just taking everything that we're doing. It's already a weird, wild story, and him just making it even
Oh god,
weirder.
it's so weirder. We'll describe stuff in the story that is like kind of weird and gross, and he'll come back and I'm like, oh my god. I can't believe you drew that, and it's like looks weirder than how I even envisioned it.
It's very much, there's elements of body horror in it, which I love. It's Midnighter, so he's like violent, but he's also super smart, and he's a heartfelt,
and he's
dude.
charming somehow.
So trying to build in all these things with the first part that hopefully people have read in Superman Worlds of War. We wanted like a action movie. We just wanted it like wacky and over the top. But we also know like the character of Midnighter is due having like this full, well-rounded, nuanced representation. I love Midnighter. I love Orlando's run specifically. And I've become friends with Steve Orlando through like picking up this body that he left behind and being like, how do I manipulate? So it's been really nice having his support in this.
Yeah, and we created a new villain for Midnighter too, and it was definitely someone who we really thought about how to make the perfect villain for this character who is like unstoppable. Like, how do you really get someone who can get into his head? What is like the villain who's going to define the character is what we tried to do with this new villain. And also like we really get in there and get to explore his relationship with Apollo, which is nice too. So it's like we're hitting these beats and like really trying to push his character forward as far as villains, relationships, this kind of thing goes. We're lucky we've been able to kind of do it.
We know what Midnighter fans want. We do. We're Midnighter fans too, but we're gonna mess with you. Like, people are so strange. It's like they want everything to be cool. They want like Midnighter and Apollo are cool and they're in love and this and that. Listen, I want that too, but it's a story. And a story has things called like conflict in it.
Right.
And we're gonna have some conflict, but I think one of the things that I've loved about Midnighter and Apollo, and I'm not saying that that's true for what we're doing, but I love the way that it was always characterized like they're like a real couple, and real couples have problems. They have moments of falling out. They have significant periods in a relationship where things aren't working out. And it doesn't mean that they go to blows or that they break up or anything like that. It just means there's tension and there's weirdness. And I always loved how that was represented in the Midnighter comics. There's a time for love and there's a time to kind of grate on each other a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to capture certain elements of that, and hopefully, as we dip further into that part of the storyline, hopefully people feel well served by that, and they feel like when they see these two men interact, they see themselves in that. They see their own relationships and their own behaviors kind of reflected on the page.
Yeah, I'm a huge Midnighter fan too. There's a lot of those Wildstorm characters that I feel are very underutilized. I know they tried to put them into the DCU proper with New 52, and we haven't really seen much of them. I know Grifter Rosenberg is doing his Grifter backup story. I think he's doing a backup in the Urban Legends book, but I'm happy Midnighter's back. And I wanted to know if you guys are going to incorporate, you don't have to tell me who, but if you're going to incorporate any other of those Wildstorm characters, Authority characters in your story.
There's one in particular that I really want to. Like, I want so bad to, but in this particular iteration of the Midnighter story, it would be shoehorned in. It wouldn't be organic to what we're doing.
And it's a backup, so the continuation of the stories, we've only got 8 page chunks, I think. So it's definitely like a very delicate operation to try and balance everything that we want to do.
Mhm.
I suspect that people that are fans of Wildstorm characters are going to be quite pleased in the future. And I'm proud that we are part of the thing that's maybe winding that up and at least getting the conversation happening again.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen interesting articles that are jumping to all these conclusions based on what they read in Future State Midnighter Part 1. And I love reading things from ostensibly reported as news being completely wrong. I love that. We got emails from our editors being like, it worked. But not all of the news is wrong. There's been some folks in the comics media who, man, they're so right about what's going to happen, but I'm not going to tell you who's right and who's wrong.
Okay.
There's some that are totally wrong, totally wrong.
Michael's so good because you read everything
To a fault.
and I don't read anything. And once a book comes out, I'm very hands off with it.
I like to abuse myself by reading everyone. It's not abusing myself. It's really it's trying to understand the power of what we're doing. We've got huge responsibility. A huge responsibility. There's people, for as much of a fan of Diana or Midnighter or any of the other characters that we're working on or will work on, there's someone out there who arguably loves them more. There's definitely people who know more about these characters in terms of how they've been presented thus far.
Mm-hmm.
My job is not necessarily to know more about the character than the readership. Our job is to tell a story that honors that, but does something new, fresh, different, interesting, compelling, something that will make you want to keep showing up, something that'll make you happy or feel some emotion. And sometimes that means hurting the feelings of readers and not giving them what they want.
Sometimes there are books that I look back on that I read as a kid. And when I say kid, I just mean like teen or like early adult. And that made me so mad. They're the books that I remember because I was like, had this visceral reaction to what happened. And even though at the time I was like, I can't believe they did this to da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, I still remember that. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I think there's something to be said about doing a story that makes people mad.
I
don't want to make people mad. I want to make people sad.
I would like to make people mad if it means, in the short term you're upset, but then you're going to have this cathartic experience when things get back on track for you. I was never the type of reader who, I love the character Warlock in the New Mutants. And when he died, spoilers from 1989 or whatever, I remember feeling sad because it was, an emotional thing for me to see a character that I like die, but I wasn't like angry at anyone. I didn't even, maybe part of it was that I was so young that I wasn't super aware of that there were actual human beings writing these things or whatever. No part of me ever thought like, oh, I need to be angry about the choice made by editorial on this thing or that. And that's just never been part of my makeup as a fan of something. As a fan of something, I feel like I buy the ticket and I take the ride. If the ride stops being fun, I can get off. I'm not stuck on this thing. I don't have to keep buying these comics. I've stopped buying comics because they turned lame or boring, not because they did something that gave me a feeling. That's what I seek is a feeling. So yeah, I'm trying to escape my pain. Give me some other fake pain.
Yeah, I mean, I can point to, there's a book, it's not even 3 years old that really pissed me off, but I am at an age where I know it's not necessarily the writer, that it was probably more having them do that to that specific character. I won't say who.
it's like too much information though, you know. Like I think once we start metagaming our fandom, when we start being like, I don't know if that's the writer or if it's the editor, or, you start getting into tricky territory because it like you stop thinking about the character as this like as this being, and you start thinking about it as a product. You start thinking about it as this thing that's manipulated by people who want you to keep buying the comic, keep taking your money from you. uh, and I hate to think of comics in that way. I like
Hmm.
to view the characters with a degree of purity of, if a character makes a dumb choice in the book, I don't think, oh, the writer doesn't know how to write this person. I think, wow, that character made a dumb choice that seems out of character for them. That's going to be a big mess to clean up. Uh, and I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm going to be around to watch them clean up the mess because that character screwed up in a real boring kind of way, and I'm not here for it.
Yeah.
It's just a different mentality, and so part of the reason why I read all this stuff about the work that we do and the characters that we work on is because that's so outside of my norm that I want to be aware of that being other people's norm. And
Mhm.
I don't want to change our approach or what we do to make everyone happy, but I also want to know like how people respond to things, why people respond to things in that way, and if it's worth pursuing certain things. Yeah, it's real tricky. I don't imagine that creators even 10 years ago had this kind of access to the readership, and likewise, certainly the readership didn't have this type of access to the writers to be able to reach out and say, hey, I hate you and I hate what you've done. You're screwing it up. You're blowing it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
much different on a book like Wonder Woman than it was on Gotham Academy, because Gotham
Mhm.
Academy was all our own characters. You know, we like
Right.
created that from the ground up. Every other character that we used, like as far as um, like bigger characters, they didn't show up very much. They were just kind of in the peripheries, or they were like teachers at the school, or like, you know, kind of a monster of the week type thing. But Wonder Woman, because she's so established, and characters like, you know, Midnighter and stuff that have built-in fan bases, they definitely have um there's more, you know, opinions about it.
It's
People,
exciting. It's a
yeah,
neat passion.
it's a
Mhm.
different writing
Yeah,
experience too,
even
you
people
know?
that don't love what we're doing, like I'm into it. You know, I'm into people being passionate about stuff. What a beautiful thing, you know, and what a great way to entertain yourself, but to get passionate about these comics. I just wish that people understood we're all shooting for the same goal, you know, and
Mhm.
it works a lot better if we all kind of collaborate and make this thing together. And how
Right.
we make the thing together is not. I was just on Twitter looking at a friend of mine who's writing a really big book, just getting lambasted by people telling him what to do. It's a thing he can't do. I guarantee editors will not let him do it, and he probably doesn't want to do it. And he's just getting hammered by people, relentlessly hammered. And I was thinking, man, I hope he's okay, because it does hurt people when you
Yeah.
come after them like that. It sucks. Um, but whatever, man. Like this is we're living the dream, you know. We get to play. I get to do the things with Diana that I believe she is meant to be doing, and that's a huge privilege. And so yeah, people can love it or leave it, but I hope that they love it, and I would like
Yeah.
to convert more fans. You know.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, like I try not to well, I don't try. I don't bash stuff openly if about something if I don't like it, because I can, you know, it's easy to understand that not every book is for everyone, right? Like some people can love a book and the person right next to you could hate it, right? Like they could just be passionately just dislike the book. Um, so if I do have anything that like really bothers me, I just keep that to myself, or my friend. I don't like promoting hate, and that I think that's what people had would always question me on my website before I started doing the channel, YouTube channel. I would write reviews, and they'd be like, "You're only writing about books you like." I'm like, "Well, why am I going to put energy into writing about something that I dislike? You know, I can give an honest opinion. I'll give an honest opinion about something, but I'm not going to take time to put out negative. You know, it doesn't seem,
Right.
seems like counterproductive to what I want to do. I want to share my love and passion for comic books. I don't want to share hate for comics. There's enough of that. And you're talking about creators like not having the same thing 10 years ago. No, you had Wizard magazine that would tell people that they thought were good, and they'd bash people they thought were bad, and they whatever could make them more money, that's what they would promote. So
Or who was paying them off. There was some shenanigans back then.
Oh yeah,
There was.
I love stories about Wizard, man. I love
Same,
I grew up
here.
reading Wizard, so you know, as a kid, as an 11-year-old, when I first picked it up, like I didn't realize what was going on, but now I can go back and look at them, and I'm like, oh shit.
I often couldn't afford to buy many comics, so I would try and keep up by reading Wizard. I would
same.
like, oh, if I get this, I kind of like can keep up with all these other things. Yeah, that's what I mean when I say if we all work together. I'm not saying like, hey, back our books even if you don't like them. What I'm saying is, focus on the things that you love.
Mhm.
Like, life is frighteningly short.
Yeah.
Don't expend that energy going out and taking shots at things. I do it, you know, I'm a human being. I recently tweeted something about a show that I watched, and it was really, really bad. Like so bad that I felt compelled to tell the world, hey, this was a bad thing. Later on that evening, I look at and I see that the guy that wrote that episode friended me on Twitter. Like he didn't understand that I was like, it was sort of snarky, and I wasn't being super clear that it was a bad show, but he friended me on Twitter, and I felt like garbage. I felt like absolute trash, because that's a person who put a lot of work into something, and even though it might not have happened for me, who am I to throw stones? So that was really like kind of an awakening moment where I was like, one, you never know when somebody's gonna like Google up their thing that they made out of interest to see how it works for people.
Mhm.
And two, everything is made by a human being with a heart. Just based on that, like if I watch a show and don't care for it, maybe I don't need to try and put other people off of it. Let them discover on their own, because they might really enjoy it. Either way, I'm friends with that dude now. I keep meaning to like reach out to him and lie to him and tell him how much I love this show.
Though you guys are busy with Wonder Woman, you're busy with Midnighter. What else do you guys have cooking up that you can talk about or possibly tease that you got?
Well, we're probably going to write more together. I can't tell you what.
We're definitely writing more together. We've got a huge project in the works.
Okay.
Not going to say anything more about that, but it'll be really exciting when people know about it, because it's going to be something.
I'm very excited about it.
It'll be different but familiar. It's going to be a very different type of story than the stories that we've done thus far. So yeah, that's really exciting. So yeah, that's a thing that we're like actively working on and doing research for right now. Additionally, my partner on that book that I mentioned earlier, Tremor Dose, we've finished another graphic novel that we'll be announcing where and when that'll be available very soon. So that's been really exciting, putting the finishing touches on it and making sure that it's all ready and good to go and be served up. A couple other smaller like DC things that I can't really mention quite yet. Although we did write a piece in Infinite Frontier Zero that's coming out in early March, I think.
Weeks, yeah.
And that's really exciting, because it's in a completely different setting than any of the other stuff that we've worked on. So that's fun.
I did a Batman black and white. I wrote a Batman black and white story for Terry and Rachel Dodson, which comes out. I don't know when it comes out. Actually, March maybe.
Is it issue 3 or 4?
I think it's. I don't know what issue it is, but I did the cover too, which is cool because I've written one, I've drawn one, and I've done the cover. So I feel like that's it. I don't need to do anything. I did the hat trick.
Awesome.
For Batman black and white.
You see how she's like, that's it. I don't have to do anymore.
I don't have to do anymore.
Let me write every Batman black and white thing ever from that. You know, like that's the difference between Becky and me. She's like, I'm good.
I did a story in the Legend of the Dark Knight, which is coming up pretty soon. That just got announced this week. I can't tell you what issue it is or what characters are in it, but that was really exciting to do.
Man, we suck. What can we tell?
That's fine.
I do a bunch of like short stories and mini comics. So for the past like year, I've been like hacking away at a new short story, which is like hundreds of pages long. So it's ridiculous. So that's something that I do in my spare time.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, beyond that, we're always like picking away at our own self-published stuff and stuff we've got a web store. It's mysteryschool.bigcartel.com, which is where, you know, we sell a lot of mini comics and pins and posters and stuff like that. So there's always something new going on. There's always something, you know, that where a different means of expression. Like, I think that it's really kind of you to earlier have said like, oh, you're both artists. It's like, I don't view myself as an artist. I view myself maybe more as a writer than as an artist, but I definitely do draw. Like, I think we're sold out of, I did like a body horror comic last year.
That's sold out.
But
I missed the mark on that. Shelley shared it and I was too late. I was late to the
Yeah, I'm gonna get it reprinted soon. But I've got another book called Unlucky, which is about a boy who he gets kidnapped and he gets all the luck milked out of his brain. And I drew that one too. So yeah, I guess it's mostly about, I look at the value of my life sometimes, not always, but sometimes I look at it in the different ways that I'm able to take the stuff that's going on, like in my mini universe that's trapped in my skull, and how I can like spill it out into the world for other people to see. So that's like the great work, you know, the great exciting work is the collection of everything that we do, both independently and together, whether it's for a nice big publisher who's like helping us, you know, keep the heat going, or whether it's like these passion projects. Becky has put so much time into working on this mini comic that she calls it. And it's gonna be absolutely
it's self-indulgent. It's self-indulgent.
But that's like that's what it takes to be like a full-on creator and to live a full life. So I want to say to anybody that's like listening, who's like excited about making things and they're waiting for somebody to green light their dreams or something like that, stop it. You know, stop waiting around. Like, you can green light your stuff like right now. It just takes getting going on it. That's been the story of how Becky and I have kind of developed ourselves. Is everything began with just, oh, I want to make something, I'm going to make it. And you figure it out along the way and you make other friends who have similar interests and goals. But that's like kind of been like the B plot of my career, is trying to remind people of this thing. I would love to be like this big, powerful, like Scott Snyder type of character in comic, or, you know, Grant Morrison, like these people who can kind of pick and choose their projects and can dictate how an entire line goes. But I know that I already have that power. I already have that. It's just, you know, it's smaller. There's a smaller audience for it. But I think that we discover routinely that oftentimes big numbers doesn't necessarily mean greater quality. I mean, we just suffered through a presidency
Yeah.
that supposedly the majority wanted. So don't let numbers be a thing. Don't let some other gatekeeper be the thing. Yeah, that's kind of like the note that I would like to leave it on. We're out here right next to you, people who feel like they're making things that aren't being seen by people. We're lucky enough that we're getting to work on these big projects, but we'll never stop working on the stuff that is that's coming from within, that doesn't have a giant built-in audience of people telling you how a character should act or shouldn't act.
That is a great spot to end this. I love mini comics, so I will definitely drop a link to the site. I'll pick up your giant mini comic that you're working on, Becky.
In years. It's going to take years.
Well, I got time, so once it's ready, I'll be picking it up. Same for you, Michael. Anything you got coming out, I'm definitely going to support or pick it up. And before I let you go, I was wondering if you could also drop the links to where we all can find you online, and I will drop those links down below in the comments also.
All right. I'm Becky Cloonan at everything. Well, which is basically just Twitter and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm Michael W. Conrad on Twitter and Instagram, and I've got a website, mwconrad.com. Don't update it super often, but it's got links to everything there. So if you just go to MW Conrad, you'll find me and my socials.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys again, and it's been a privilege and a pleasure, and I definitely want to chat with you guys again when all these books that you couldn't talk to me about today, we can talk about.
Oh,
Let's do this again. Let's reconvene in like maybe 6 months or something.
It depends. We don't know when they're going to announce this.
No idea.
When they announce this next thing, I get the feeling that like it's going to blow some minds, because it's going to be very unexpected.
Okay.
But also expected.
Yeah. I think people will be excited.
All right.
It's
awesome.
another DC project. I don't think that's like.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not
we're
spoiling
being kind
anything.
of honest with it. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again, and
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.